Hey everyone, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your host and leadership performance coach, John Germillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network. So these are great leads, these people that I'm interviewing, and I'll get to the books that have inspired them, that have contributed to the value that they're carrying out in their work, in their life, in their business. Again, this all started from me sharing books that I was reading and then just comparing notes with people in my network and getting to what they found important. So I figured from this, we can kind of get to who the person is, the book that they want to talk about, what they took away, and what they're up to today. So today I have a colleague that I only met in the last year, and it was through virtual forums because of the pandemic. But it's somebody who we see each other's work and we comment on each other's social media posts. So I respect a lot of the work that she's been doing through her company, and she can provide the background. I don't want to butcher it or take away from what it is or what it means to her, but I want to introduce Christina Dufour. Christina, thank you so much for sitting down with me, albeit virtually, to go over the book that we're going to cover, The Four Agreements. Why don't you get a little bit into who you are today, meaning what you're up to, what's valuable to you in the work you're doing, and then we can jump into the book and see why that's so valuable to you and why you respect the book a lot with the lessons that you can take away.
Sure. Thank you, John. And I appreciate this opportunity to be here with you today on the Book Leads. Some of the stuff that I'm doing today involves well-being and performance coaching. I work mainly with corporations and executives and entrepreneurs. I'm also a corporate training specialist, and this work is quite meaningful to me because I feel as though there are a lot of trainings available for technical skills, hard skills in industry, but not so much out there for the soft skills and the human skills, the foundation of those hard skills. And so I build training programs for companies where we build the soft skills in with the hard skills and develop programs, that have a foundation of well-being to drive performance and productivity. And so that's great fun.
What about your website? What can people find on your website?
On my website, you can find more information about some of the things I just mentioned, but there's also a lot of links. I work with quite a few different virtual companies, and so you can, find access to Antalk, which is a platform for leaders to share experiential knowledge.
Okay.
So it's kind of, real insights from real professionals. Community Mindfulness Project is an organization I work with that allows free meditation for all. So that's a really great opportunity for people to access meditation. I have my own meditations guided on the website that are free for individuals to try. There's a portal for corporate clients, but that's password protected.
Yeah.
And then, there's some other things. I work with Meditation Studio app and the Muse Meditator, the headband,
Yep.
Electronic meditation. So there's access to kind of go there and discover more in meditation, mindfulness, this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think the last couple of weeks I've seen your social media posts pick up based on those different apps and all the projects that you're working on. So I think that's great. So the Carnelian Connection, right? Is that how it's pronounced? Carnelian?
Carnelian.
Carnelian.
Mm-hmm.
What is that about? What does that mean? If you could just give me, because I've seen you post from it, and I've always been meaning to ask you what that stands for, or where it's derived from.
Sure. When I came into the world of spirituality, so to speak, I was surprised by how everyone was working with stones and crystals. And, I didn't know much about any of it then. And frankly, I was a bit skeptical about the whole thing. But I remember the moment I had a connection with a stone, and it happened to be carnelian. And when I was looking many years later, to start my business, that stone stood out to me because it's connected to, essentially personal power, your connection to yourself. It's motivating and invigorating for physical exercise. It's yoga. And it's also a support to connect to um, your inner sense of selflessness. And so that's really supportive for meditation. And it's connected to creativity and your center of right below expression, everything that you might connect to, your inner child, your joy, all of this sort of stuff. So it's really representative of a lot of what I support to bring people in my business so that they can express it more,
Awesome.
in their lives.
I love that how it's tied into that original stone and it's kind of full circle, bringing it back to your website. So I like that. I had reached out to you about doing this series when I saw you had posted something on Instagram about a book that, not that you were reading at the time, but I think in the post you had said you'd read it dozens of times. And it's this book right here, The Four Agreements, a Toltec Wisdom Book. And it resonated with me right away because I read it years ago. Um, and it's just powerful, and it seems to kind of tie in perfectly with your work, the way you kind of deal with the spirituality of your clients, of yourself, and kind of sharing that kind of knowledge with the people that are following you on social media and through your company. Can you give me an overview of the book? What is it that this book means to you? What is it that stands out the most?
Sure. John, I came across the book, I guess it was about 12 years ago, and somebody had gifted it to me, and I read it, and it just blew me away. Uh,
Yeah.
and I remember actually telling my younger cousin at the time, uh, we need you need to read this book. There's something about this book.
Yeah.
And she and I, we were going to the gym a lot together at the time, and so we would read the book together. And we started working with each other to kind of put some of the fundamental ideas into play. What's meaningful to me in the book has changed. I've continued to read it since then, and I've read the book many, many times. At least, I usually revisit it at least once a year. It's just such a simple read. It's really short, but as you said, it's very impactful. And so every time I revisit it, something new stands out to me. I receive the information in a new way every time. So it's hard to point out just one thing.
Yeah.
But as an overview, I think it's the book itself. I mean, it's sharing Toltec wisdom, which is native tradition um, from the Toltec from Mexico. And it's basically their way of viewing the world and human relating and human thinking and I really appreciate how they bring out, one of the first things that they speak to is about the dream. We're all living in a
Yeah.
dream,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, this is so impactful, John, because I just think of it in this way. It's like I could never understand your mind completely and fully because from the moment you were born to now, the amount of experiences and, relationships and life and exposure that you've had to different things is just, there's
Yeah.
so much involved in that. And even if I were to envision and imagine walking in your shoes, there's really no way I can understand that. So when we look at it that way, it's kind of like just as I see the world in this way, based upon the things I've had exposure to, the experiences I've had, um, and the choices I've made, and the way I've chosen to think, and maybe even how I've evolved that, or the practices, especially, right? The behaviors, the practices that I do on a regular basis that forms who I am and how I see the world. And that's quite unique. And so
Yeah.
just the understanding that that is literally individual for all of us
Yeah.
is profound. And I think that's the first thing that comes up, and that leads to the foundation kind of for these four agreements.
Yeah. This book somebody had, they saw what I was reading, what I was sharing on social media. They knew the work that I was doing with leadership coaching. They knew that I'm like a leadership and self-development, maybe self-help nerd when it comes to just reading different things. And I had never heard of the book. They provided it, but what stands out from what you said absolutely is just how simple it is. And it's almost like aggravating that somebody can put it so simply and walk you through it. So when I brought this, well, when you mentioned the book in your post and I saw it, I started thinking about it again. And it's just amazing how many other books are like high level. They tell you the ways in which you need to think, and they kind of guide you through the steps you need to take to get to those positions or those mindsets, whatever it may be. But the one of the best words I can use, although it is full of wisdom, is just simple, because it's almost like the author, Don Miguel Ruiz, is sitting with you, walking through you, anticipating what you're going to respond to him. Literally, it's kind of like, this is what you have to, this is how you have to think about it. This is the next step. This won't work because, so think back to this. And he kind of repeats it over and over again, expanding what he's building towards. But yeah, I mean, that word just came out now, is how aggravating it can be, that I think we simplify life so much where we don't think about it, and we react, we live in it, whether it's our work or business or our personal life. But there are these simple lessons, and um you have young family. I've seen, pictures of your family, and you have young kids, and I have my sons and nephews and so on. And the major thing that comes back to me with this book is that I wish this is something that people would read when they were younger, just because it sets such a powerful foundation, that I think would offset most of the issues that people may have nowadays. Not all of them, but like you said, that perception, your mind thinking, overthinking about what other people are thinking. And we'll get into the four agreements in a minute. But it's just, that's the thing that stood out for me, from what you were saying, is just how simple the book is. It's such a guide, because it just, like I said, feels like the author is there walking you through it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that idea that we see the world in one way and just naturally, without even thinking about it, expect that everyone else sees it similar to us.
Yeah. So,
And
go
that
ahead.
causes a lot of stress, or expecting them to see it similar to us.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the relationship struggles in today's world, right, the divorce rates, the struggles in business, and people, more and more people not wanting to work under the clutches of micromanagement and all of these, systems. I think this book it's just such a great, to have this perspective is the beginning to kind of freeing yourself, I believe, of a lot of unnecessary stress and conflict. And I mean, I work in the world, so I
Yeah.
see so much of what Don Miguel Ruiz explains in this simple way that you're speaking about play out, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing. And I guess it's a process of maturing through life. But you
Mhm.
get to this point where this really resonates with you, because maybe you've picked up those lessons, you've realized it along the way. But it's just amazing how simple they can be. And once you've kind of reached the point in your career or your life where you kind of really know yourself, much of the stress that you've thought about in your life, you look back and it's like nobody else had kind of put that on us. Uh,
Yeah,
it's most of it is, as we'll get into when we go into the agreements, it's almost like we set ourselves up. It's almost like what we did to ourselves. Very rarely, there are some instances where it's triggered by, or not triggered by, but actually caused by outside forces, other people, relationships. But it's amazing if we all think about it, if we think about our lives going back, our careers, whatever it may be, how much of it is us kind of doing ourselves in. So,
mhm,
you want to jump into the agreements? We can kind of do a rundown of what they are and kind of what they mean to you. Would that be good?
sure.
All right. So agreement number one is be impeccable with your word. So what does that mean to you? How do you live that? How do you see that play out in your work?
Be impeccable with your word. With the way it's described is to use your word in the direction of love. And what it means to me is allowing myself some space, right? In a moment when I'm having an interaction with somebody, to stay connected to my heart and my center, and be able to see things as they are, see people as they are, offer some level of compassion and acceptance for that, and then speak from a place of compassion and acceptance.
Yeah,
That doesn't,
God, I'm sorry.
that doesn't necessarily mean that you accept something that isn't right,
Yeah.
right? You can
Yeah.
still be accepting and compassionate and say no.
Yes.
And so, in the direction of love is in the direction of love for yourself as well, love for the other. And as I'll probably point out, might as well just say it now, it's a journey. And I believe he might even say that in the book, being impeccable with your word. When I first heard it was, everything I say needs to line up with what I'm willing to do, with what I'm thinking. And I was really literal about it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I said everything with such integrity. And if I said I was going to be there, I had to be there. And so, but that ended up causing me a different kind of stress. So it's funny, as you work with these sorts of things, you really can learn what it means for you.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I mean, there's so many books out there that are kind of like they give you guides, they give you steps, they give you phases that you go through, but you can't, I mean, that's not life. Like life plays out so randomly. So it's kind of like you have to work in that general direction or that general theme, but to be so prescriptive with yourself in the moment is tough. Um, and the way, and it's amazing how everybody reads this differently or how there are variations, what we take away from this. This one to me means kind of, um, it is living your truth, kind of in the vein of what you're saying and how you approach other people. Um, but it almost means to me, the way that I had taken it was stick to what you say. Uh, and it sounds, again, very simple, like the lessons that he provides throughout this book. But the crazy thing is a lot of the frustration that I see with clients or friends or even myself is when I don't stick to, like you said, what your truth is, what you're all about. And I think it causes stress within ourselves when we're not kind of living our truth, as well as when we're not living that truth with other people, delivering on what they need based on who we are. So be impeccable with your word is just kind of, like I said, I think a lot of the frustration that we see nowadays, whether in work, society, is just kind of you're not doing the best by society, by your community. But at the same time, if you are, there may be times where you're not sticking to it as well as you should be. But again, a lot of frustration I see is just because we don't. And a lot of it is us. I think it falls on us to kind of stick to what we're saying, sticking to what we're wanting, and not compromising who we are. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Especially the not compromising who we are. And he says in the book that when you are impeccable with your word, that brings you happiness and peace. You feel good. And so I think that that's a really good guidepost, because when you're staying in alignment with who you are, not compromising who you are, you do feel good.
Yes.
Right? But we're functioning, when we're working with this sort of stuff, we're functioning in a world of abstracts.
Yes.
So sometimes that's a difficult world to navigate, to understand. Am I being impeccable with my word? So I think a good fundamental understanding of that is, well, how do I feel?
Yes.
If I said that, how do I feel? Or I'm going to say this, how does that make me feel? Or I'm going to do this in alignment with what I said, how does that make me feel?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it sounds like a script, but it's like if you start thinking that way, as you do it more and more, it becomes more natural. But
That's right.
you do take that pause, you do take that moment to figure out if it's working for you or not. Because I think so much of our issues are driven by how much we're reacting in the moment. Where if we kind of just pause and literally write down in the beginning how we feel afterwards or what we're doing, what worked, what didn't, it kind of gets you in that mindset. But I mean, it's the reality of our world that as we're going through our days, it's kind of just more reactive, but it's very self-reflective. This particular agreement, I mean, they all are, but this one in particular.
Yeah.
Okay, the second one, did you have something else to add?
Well, I think, one thing I was thinking of
Yeah.
is that because I was reorganizing my bookshelf the other day, and I was noticing, just how many books I still had books on writing, on critical thinking, on thinking around society, and all of this sort of stuff. And it's just so much knowledge, right? And he speaks to this in the book, and especially when we're talking about being impeccable with your word, because that's knowledge, it's language, that's where the word comes from. And just the idea that we've literally practiced and habituated uh, intellectualizing everything, thinking, judging everything. So of course we're reactive because we've trained our brain to analyze, process, problem solve, judge, just like
Yeah.
that. We haven't trained our brain to observe, to have space, to breathe. And so it's really interesting because when it comes to the four agreements, I see a lot of parallels with a lot of the other studies I've done, right? In yogic philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, even the Tao, and some of these sorts of philosophies, there's a lot of alignment there. And they kind of support one another, because if you could have that meditative state of being, that spaciousness, that non reactivity, that equanimity,
Yeah.
then it's easier for you to have awareness enough to actually act on these things, to make changes on these things, and to see results, I guess, more efficiently.
Just out of curiosity, what whether it's in your programming or volunteering or anything that you might do, what's the youngest ages that you work with?
Uh, I mean, I've worked with kids as young as 5, 6,
Okay. Okay.
uh, but my preference is to work with anybody in terms of meditation and this sort of thing, usually like 20 years old and above. And
So
I'll do some more
what's the
for
work that you
teenagers.
might do with the 5-year-olds around that age? What's the work that you do with them?
Well, for them, I think it's, helpful for them to be in touch with their senses, because the senses are what really are the beginning points of distraction, right? So if a child can kind of really focus in on a sound,
Yeah.
the sound of a bell ringing, and have no other stimulation but that, right? And I don't mean music that's has a lot of stimulation. I mean just the sound of a bell,
Yeah.
something very, very simple, right? Or let's focus on this object, the teddy bear. And you'll notice you're judging, analyzing, thinking about this teddy bear, but let's just see the teddy bear sitting there and be with it. Breathe with it, and then if you're going to do breathing with the child, sensing through touch your body, breathe, feel that. So using the senses can be good as a way to help the child have some level of stimulation while finding, a one-pointed focus that can allow them to be more centered.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, and again, the reason I ask is just because I'm curious. In your particular work, as it ties into this book, it's just something that to me seems like a mindset, a belief, a path that we should consider with younger students, with young adults. you have to think about when you kind of phase it into whether it's a curriculum or outside. But it just seems like this kind of mentality, this kind of mindset of this book would lay the foundation for more of an understanding of life. And I don't think it goes so deep that it would go over younger people's heads. But I just like the ideas that it gives. And you had said, sometimes you have to sit back, take a step back, and take all of it in. It's like
Mhm.
when they're younger, they're developing how they're going to approach life. So I was just curious as to what the youngest age was that you worked with, because I think those kind of skills, the work that you do, as well as what's covered in this book, are just, I think these are part of life skills. Because like I said, when you're an adult, I think most of the issues that we deal with are covered in this book and the steps and the agreements that he lays out.
Yeah, certainly. And for a parent, I think to read the book is very useful because it can support you in seeing how easy it is to inhibit your child, so to speak. And I think that the fundamental idea that is drawn from the book when it comes to children is children are already free, they're already uninhibited. And the way we relate with them is what actually kind of closes them off, what gives them
Yes.
the judgments that
Yes.
makes them want to be less authentic,
Yeah.
and so um I think taking these ideas and using them with children is more about how you relate to the child. Instead of giving them this knowledge, it's really about showing them and teaching them, um, and speaking with them in constructive ways. He used an example in the book. A mother was very stressed when she got home from work, and she just couldn't take any more stimulation. Of course, he describes it differently in the book,
Yeah.
and she starts singing. The daughter, she's very excited to see her mother. She's singing, and then the mother just can't take it, so she says something to the effect of, stop singing. Your voice is horrible, or too much, or your singing is
Yeah.
awful, or something. And how often we do those things and we don't even think twice about it. It's not like we're trying to harm the other. It's not like that's our intention, but we say something that is that impactful to a child. The child hears that as my voice is awful and they never sing again. And so to be able to allow your child some level of freedom, which I know is challenging, right? Because you want to protect and you want to, manage and
Yeah.
navigate, right? No, stay on
Yeah.
this path. But
Yeah.
I think what he's getting to in here is to provide the kind of love that these four agreements really are supporting us and being in contact with. To be able to provide that to your child in their life, and by way of not restricting them, by way of allowing some level of freedom. And if something like that were to happen, you could say to the child, with less reactivity, mommy had a really tough day today, and I could really use some silence, because when I feel like this inside myself, I just need quiet so that
Yeah.
I can settle and calm. Is that okay? Can we sing later? I love your singing, but, and being able to respond in those ways is useful. And I think that's what you get to at a more advanced stage, because your emotions don't take over you, right?
Yeah.
And you're able to respond even while you're feeling something very challenging or difficult.
And that's huge. I mean, that plays into everything else. It's like anything else in life, any opinion you have, anything you need, right? From the mother's perspective, it's not what you need, it's how you're conveying it to others. So there's a
Mhm.
lesson there for both the child and the parent. It's not only about the impact you have on the kid, but for yourself. You can have your needs met, but it's all about how you tactfully share them with other people. I mean, especially a kid. And I think this is the book where when I read it, um, he says a lot that we have to deprogram ourselves or reprogram ourselves based on that particular thing, that instance, that example you gave about, the child singing, the mother lashes out, and now the kid has it in their head that they have to be a certain way or they can't be who they want to be, the singing or being happy, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
This was like the first instance where I thought about just how programmed we are as kids to act in certain ways, whether it's curriculum or at home. And that's when I really started thinking about how young we can go to kind of set people on a certain path to work towards these lessons that he gets into. So I appreciate the fact that you brought up the example of the mom with the child singing. So the second agreement is don't take anything too personally, or don't take anything personally.
Mhm.
What's your take on that?
Well, this one I remember really stood out to me because and even still does. It's like the idea that nothing anybody does is because of you. And he even says something like it's the most selfish thing to to actually think that what other people are doing is because of you.
Yeah. I think when I read
And
this, I was really getting into like speaking and PowerPoint presentations and things like that. So it really helped me. Like it's almost like, you know, get over yourself. It's like no one's out to get you. But yeah, that stands out for me.
yeah, it's like, letting go of personal importance. But at the same on the same token, it makes sense that we feel that way because just a part of ourselves and our mind is just looking to protect
Yeah. Well,
fundamentally,
of course.
and so that's why we become a little offended and need to defend. We're just trying to protect ourselves and our opinions and our ideas because they matter and are meaningful to us.
Yeah.
But it can cause a lot of struggle, and I think that that's what he's getting to in the book.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
um,
think anybody's really going to nail all of these 100%. I think it's a balancing act. I
mhm,
think um, when I've read about stress, there was a different book that I'd read on stress. It talked about the importance of that stress, that it keeps you prepared, it keeps you on your toes, it keeps you ready to go.
yeah,
So even this, it's like, yes, don't take anything personally, but it's a balancing act. Um, I remember speaking to students and kind of being like, the discussion was on being concerned about other people liking you. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't care what people think about me. I don't care what people think about me. It's like, nah, you probably do. To some extent, you probably do. No one's going to be, no one can really be completely outside their tribe or any tribe and not care that they're not part of something
yeah,
unless you're, a psychopath, a sociopath. The rest of us need that kind of connection, but it definitely has to be a balance. I mean, I could sit here and say, I don't care what people think, but I've learned more to consider who it is that I'm giving credence to when it comes to what I take away from it. What do you think
mhm.
about that?
Yeah, and he says something in there that I've worked on for a long time, uh, and I think is very valuable. Because he's saying, whether somebody gives you a compliment or they give you, they say something that's unkind, don't take it personally. So, I think on the journey to not taking things personally, one step is okay, we recognize everybody's in their own dream, as we said in the beginning.
Yeah.
I can't really understand the perspective of anybody else, and they can't really understand mine. And so I need to know that just everywhere, no matter what. And then if I'm not going to take things personally, it's always just remembering this nothing this person is doing is because of me. And so then I want to understand the other. From that place, I want to understand the other. And from that place, I don't feel like I'm responsible for anybody.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
people's everybody is responsible for themselves, and they're responsible for making their own choices, and they're responsible for their mindsets, and they're responsible for their actions and their behaviors. So I think what sometimes happens in this realm is, we want to trust somebody. So we place our trust in them and we look at their behaviors and we look at the way they're thinking about something, and we become kind of observant of, can I trust them? Are they doing the right thing? Are they saying the right thing? And we're actually just perceiving that through our own lens. We might
Yeah.
not even be, which kind of leads into the next, agreement, right, with the assumptions. But if I understand that all I need to do is trust myself, take responsibility for myself, my choices, everybody's in their own world, then my job becomes to know myself,
Yeah.
know that place of joy, that place of love, that place of peace that's within me, and live from that place. And when I'm grounded and centered there, all of a sudden, it really doesn't matter so much
Yeah.
what somebody is saying, whether for good or bad. It's just kind of like, well, that's great. Thank you for your perspective. I appreciate all perspectives. So
Yeah.
you can have appreciation for everyone's point of view and know yours and know that you can move in yours as well, but feel grounded wherever you are. So for kids, for instance, if I'm going to produce a piece of work, whatever that might be, an art painting project, if I do that thing for the love of doing it, because of what it puts me in contact
Yeah.
with inside myself, then it almost doesn't matter the positive or negative feedback I get. I don't need to take that personally because I didn't do it for somebody else. I
Yeah.
did it
Yeah.
because of how it made me feel. And I think the more we kind of follow that pathway, take responsibility for ourselves, let everyone take responsibility for themselves, know we're in different shoes, and then make choices for ourselves that are in alignment with doing stuff because it makes us happy, because it puts us
Yes.
in contact with love, joy, peace, then it almost doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
And we have more equanimity, and we can take in many more perspectives without being so moved by them.
Yeah. What you said just triggered an idea that well, I just posted something yesterday, an article I found on NPR about hobbies. And I posted it and just asked people, what is it that makes you happy? So obviously there are hobbies, there are things you can do with other people, there are things you can share with other people. But I was curious, what is it that makes you happy? So if you didn't share it on social media, if you told nobody about it, what would be completely yours? So that resonated in what you were just saying about just being happy in and of yourself. And what's crazy also is just for me, it's a matter of energy as well. So if you spend so much time worrying, concerned, or working towards clarifying why somebody, say, doesn't like you or doesn't see the value of your work, again, balance. So if somebody doesn't like your work, where is their credibility in what they're saying? But at the same time, not tying too much, because I think energy that you're using to fight off those feelings or to figure it out constantly takes away from the energy that you can put into whatever you're working on. So that to me is the biggest takeaway from this, is just the energy, where when you take it personally, it's crippling you. So you
Mm-hmm.
think you're trying to investigate it and figure it out so you can save yourself, but all that time you're taking energy away from yourself.
For sure.
Um, the agreement number 3, don't make assumptions. And you had just kind of mentioned that a few minutes ago, where the last one kind of ties into this one.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on this one?
Uh, well, don't make assumptions, right, is basically, as I understand it, from this framework of recognizing that you are perceiving through your own lens. And so the first thing you are most likely to do is make a judgment about somebody, an experience, something that's happening. You're going to make a judgment about those things. And that's the natural way of the mind, because that's what we've trained the mind to do. But those are often assumptions. Now, probably the most easily understood metaphor of this is, well, let's say a family member was driving somewhere and they said, I'll be back in 20 minutes. And then they don't come back in 20 minutes, and 30 minutes, you're getting a little worried. And 40 minutes, you've really made some assumptions. Well, they must have gotten into a car accident. Something's
Yeah.
really got to be going wrong. You can really go down a rabbit hole of worry by making assumptions, and how often we do that. Or somebody shows up one day with a certain demeanor, a certain expression on their face, and we make assumptions about that. They must be pissed off, they must be mad, they, or whatever. And then we start relating based upon the assumptions we've made in our mind.
Yeah, and it becomes like
I mean,
it becomes a vicious cycle. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
for sure.
So
And it's
you're
so
making
easy to
assumptions about
see.
something that may have happened, but then your attitude is locked into reacting to that perception, and then the rest of your behavior is based on that perception, and it just spirals out of control, or it can.
Yeah. And just thinking about this, I mean, I think you can see without even a ton of concrete ideas, you could, if you're honest, you could really see, oh my God, I'm making assumptions all day long.
Oh
That's
yeah.
what I'm doing.
Oh
And so
yeah.
Don Miguel Ruiz suggests that we ask questions instead of making assumptions. We look to understand, which what not taking it personally would support us in doing, right? And when we look to understand, because we're not going to make assumptions, then we ask questions in the direction of understanding, in the direction of love, in the direction of, knowing we can't read another's mind. So instead of landing on decisions about how they feel, what they must be thinking, what they think about us, whatever, we can ask questions. And in the book, I believe he says something to the effect that all sadness and drama that you've lived in your life is rooted in making
Oh yeah.
assumptions and taking things personally.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
it's so funny, John, because
When he says that, it's like, holy shit. Like
yeah,
this guy's right. Because
so many things he says in this book, you're like, what?
that's why I'm saying it's aggravating that he just simplifies these little, and you read most of these other books and they're like these long drawn out sentences and it's based in research and all this. And his sentences are just like, stop thinking about it that way. You need to start taking care of yourself. You've been programmed to think in this certain way, but what does that do? Let's go through what that does. That does this, that does this, that does this. What does that do for you? How does that help you? I
Mhm.
mean, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but that's the style of the book. It's just so simple.
Like a
And this
two-edged
one,
sword, direct and piercing.
yeah, that's it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just so, it just seems like it is mind blowing. It seems like it should be common sense. And this one resonated with me because, I mean, I've always been an anxious person. So an anxiety by its very nature is just kind of like you're making assumptions about what you think is coming or what you think a result is going to be.
Mhm.
Um, and I've gotten better with that. It was not much worse, but it was heavier when I was a kid and young adult, and it's gotten better. But when I started reading more about it, and then this just kind of resonated, and you take a step back and you try to ease your mind, maybe sometimes meditate. I'm trying to get better about that, Christina, I swear. um, you realize that when you stop trying to make assumptions about a person or a situation or an endeavor or a project like this, and just kind of live and always do your best, which is going to be the next agreement. um, I can't tell you. Somebody that suffered from anxiety, still do every once in a while. This one was particularly strong for me, just because of what you're expecting is going to happen. And the thing is, I mean, it's. I've always tied this to, there's nothing to fear but fear itself,
Mm.
because most times in the lead up to something, that fear we have is much worse than anything that ever plays out. So
Yeah.
things can go successfully or go well, and that entire time we're fearing that something's going to happen and then it works out. How often do we fear something and then it actually plays out? I mean, I guarantee for many people it's in the minority of that group. So it's powerful. And it helped shape the way that I kind of saw my anxiety, and it was a tool that I used to kind of work through it. And speaking for somebody with that anxiety, I mean, hopefully it could do for other people what it did for me, but it opens up your eyes to how simple it can be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And my cat wants some
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry
attention.
about it.
um, uh, yes. And what this is making me think of, John, is, uh, I just really love that so much science is coming out to prove all these old ancient philosophies, right? Because neuroscience now does show us that we can't read emotions off of facial expressions. Neuroscience does show us that one thought alone impacts the nervous system and can create a
Oh
stress
yeah.
response.
Yeah.
So to take these ideas, which that's what they are, they're perspectives, they're ideas, no different than any perspectives or ideas you've been given your entire life. That's all you've been presented with, perspectives and ideas, ways to think, ways to live, ways to see things. And this is just that. And if you so choose to take it on and make a habit of it, as you've made a habit of other ways of looking at the world, other ways of thinking, then it can, dramatically affect you and make changes really for the better. Is just imagine if you were able to get to a place where you weren't making those assumptions, right? You weren't triggering these stress responses. And as you said, as you work on it, it gets better.
Yeah.
So you're an example of being able to turn that around. And I myself am too. I mean,
Yeah.
I experienced a number of struggles with anxiety and panic and stress and this sort of thing that allows me to help people now, because these are the practices, the tools, and the perspectives, along with others, that have supported me significantly in just shifting that the other way,
Yeah. And as much as I may have experienced, I don't know if this is your experience, but as much as I may have experienced that anxiety in the past, um, it's made me who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
I would not change anything about that, regardless of how much of that I may have felt in certain instances or felt overall, or just, felt that through my body, however you experience anxiety yourself. There's nothing at this point that I would change because it makes me who I am. It's made me who I am today, speaking to you, wanting to
Mm-hmm.
do this video series, this podcast. Um, if I didn't have that, maybe I would have been, maybe if I didn't make assumptions, I probably would have thought that the world was mine at a younger age and then gone down a different path that didn't lead me to where I am now, where I feel that fulfillment. Who knows where that other path may have led, but I think it's important to really think about the fact that it's made me who I am, and I don't regret it at all. So I'm grateful that I'm learning this lesson now, but everything that has happened to me in the past has made me who I am today. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and what that makes me think of, John, is like, just when we're talking about not taking anything personally, even not taking your own life personally, right? Your own
Yeah.
past experiences, your own past choices, being able to see all of that um, with some level of acceptance and appreciation, I think is freeing, very, very freeing.
Yeah. I think just based on what I mentioned about my past, I think you look at it, and I just said it a couple minutes ago, that self-fulfilling prophecy. So you have that feeling and it locks you into how you're feeling, and you maybe limit yourself to other experiences. Those experiences don't happen. You're like, look, that didn't happen. I was right. So now I'm going to keep being anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But you look back and those are lessons learned. So I don't know. I as long as you learn them at some point and you are cognizant of it, you can move forward, kind of selecting how you design your life and the choices you make. So I think we're doing all right.
For sure. And, a piece that he brings up in the book, he speaks about it throughout and from the beginning, is that we're made of, we're made of a higher power, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm hesitating on what words to use, because you could use this, you could call it whatever you want: universe, God, spirit, the
Yes.
spirit in all things, the creator in all things.
Yeah.
But the fundamental idea that there is something bigger than us that has created us, and we are all a part of that, which means we are a part of the same thing, which means we are the same thing in our essence. We are all one. And so, he speaks about that in the book, that I am God and you are God. And we are living a life as an expression of God. And so I think even just kind of recognizing, that things are happening and being able to connect to a higher power, whatever that is for you,
Exactly.
is really also supportive in all of this, because as you're managing your life experiences and your struggles with working with yourself and relating with others and finding love, transcending fear,
Yeah.
all of this, that higher power helps. And to be quite honest, I mean, in all the work I've done, it's basically about dismantling the ego. It's about dismantling the part of your brain that is analyzing, problem solving, intellectualizing, um, all of that. And so the knowledge based part of your brain. So
Yeah.
once you do start dismantling that, whether it's meditation, whether it's taking on 4 agreements and living them, you're going to start feeling connected to something higher, something more spiritual, usually something that makes you feel connected to all things, and that can kind of grow and expand. And then as you're living your life and you're having these experiences, it's really not about judging what's happened or judging yourself or any of that. It's kind of right. It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
and maybe it's all meant to be, or it's whatever. I mean, there's something to be said for taking responsibility, having
Mhm.
free will, right, and making choices, that are responsible and healthy and in the direction of love. But there's also something to be said for things happen in life that are out of our control, and sometimes we make choices that we could judge ourselves for negatively. But at the end of the day, often those are the things that we learn the most from. Like you said, they bring you where you are, so kind of having some spaciousness for that, and a recognition that there's also something bigger than us at play here. And we're connected to that. It's helping us, it's supporting us. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I mean, you just mentioned spaciousness. That's another huge takeaway that I get, is just when you start thinking this way, not that you've nailed it, not that you've gotten it perfectly, but when you start working in this direction where you're following these agreements, it leaves you, because you're not focusing that energy on your assumptions or taking things personally and all that, you have more space to be proactive with your energy, what you want to
mhm,
seek out, what you want to create. So instead of being in reactive mode where you're fighting off all these feelings, you kind of put your sword and your shield down, and then you're able to grow from there. You're able to design the life that you do want. So it all
absolutely.
folds in, there's no other word for it, beautifully.
Mhm,
So the agreement number 4 is always do your best.
mhm.
You had mentioned this before. I mean, you can just do the best that you can. Yeah. How do you take that away? What's your take on that? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but how would you break it down?
Yeah, I mean, he speaks in there about your best will be different, right? Your best will be different every day, even moment to moment. Um, and he speaks a lot about taking care of your body. And once you've taken care of your body and your body understands that it is loved and it is appreciated, and you take care of your mind, and you can kind of progress further. And again, this is why I feel like, wow, this is in such alignment with the path of yoga and even Buddhism and all this sort of stuff. He's bringing you towards a level of purity, right, in body and mind. And in his own direction, and always doing your best is kind of, to me, recognizing we've all spent, I've spent, I mean, just look at our schooling.
I
Our
know.
school system alone has literally just built an ego. It's literally built our ability to analyze, our ability to problem solve, all of this, intellectualize everything, think, do, all of this. And not that that's bad, but there are so many other faculties,
Yes.
right? And so
Oh yeah.
when if I wanted to learn a new skill, I would have to go through a period where it was uncomfortable. I'm learning the
Yes.
piano. And it's uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. It doesn't matter what it is, any new skill. And so in a way, even though these are kind of the fundamental mindsets that we had as children, in a way, that freedom of mind, that playfulness, that joy, that non-judgmentalness, that love that was there, that freedom from, we were really in life as
Yeah.
opposed to in fear of death or all this protection. And so getting back to that kind of state, that playfulness, doesn't necessarily happen overnight, and it's an individual journey. It's a unique journey for everybody. So
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be aware of, the fact that it's just you're going to go at your own pace with it. It's going to take its time, and being gentle with yourself along the way, I think, is useful, because if you push yourself too hard, that's it.
Yeah.
You're gonna fall down. It's gonna be harder to get up. If you kind of go at a steady pace, you're with yourself the whole way. You stay connected with yourself. Ooh, we made okay. Next time we'll do better. Oh, we did it there. Oh, great. Oh, we
Yes.
really
Yeah.
didn't do it there. Oh, that didn't feel good. Okay, next time we'll. And you just kind of keep redirecting yourself as you go along. If it's something that you want to bring more of into your life,
Exactly. That's it, and this plays into the whole my curiosity about education and what we're doing by our kids, because um, we spend so much time in school where it is all you're all graded to a similar standard, and if you don't make it to that standard, you have to stay back a grade. So there's already that you have to reach this threshold, or else you're going to be separated from the group, from the tribe. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where that reprogramming comes in, because I think that's a lot of where our fear comes from. It's just by the time we're in our late teens, early 20s, and we've graduated, we've spent years trying to build up to somebody's standard, and maybe sometimes falling short, and it's on paper, it's in a report card, people can see your grades. So it's that mindset of, I don't want to take a chance, or if I can't if I cannot put myself in a situation where I'm going to be judged for something, that's like our default.
Mm-hmm.
Where always do your best is like, listen, once you've figured out you don't want to take anything personally, be careful with your assumptions. It's about you. It's about what you want. You always do your best, whatever's the best for you. But there's always that comparison. There's always that grading. There's always that. I mean, society is all about that now with social media and whatnot. So, and a lot of people forego the best that they can do because they have that fear of being judged.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's such a roadblock. It's unfortunate. Um, I've met with so many clients and have had so many clients where they hold back a lot because they don't want to be judged. And you kind of have to get to the point where, like you said, if it's something that you find important, you can experiment, you can try something new. And if it doesn't work out, as long as you're really keeping your word and your word is impeccable to who you are and what you want, if you're living to that, if you're not taking things personally, if you're not making assumptions, just live within what you want to create as best as you can.
Yeah. And there's something I teach in my business called attention management. And I believe he talks about this in the book as well, is just the idea that, where you place your attention is key. And that is one of the ways to work with all of these things. So just paying attention to where your attention is at any given point in time, where your thoughts are and the quality of those thoughts, what you're thinking. And then, remind yourself that that's in your power to choose. So if I have a thought that goes by that says, I got to get an A, otherwise mom and dad are going to hate me. Just
Yeah.
this idea that you could take that thought and you can look at it literally like this and say, no, they're not.
Yeah.
That's a silly thought. That's an assumption. That's taking things personally. I'm not doing that. What's a better thought? Right? And so that's kind of a skill we can do for ourselves. Well, what's a better thought that I want to put in place of that? And it's also a skill we could teach our kids.
Yeah.
And thinking that new thought, and it doesn't mean the old one's not going to come back up, because that's a fear. right?
Exactly.
And
You're not
so
going to
it
have that
does.
perception. You're not going to have that perfection. It's trial and error. It's
Mhm.
not about being absolutely balanced all the time, but it's about working in that direction.
Yeah. And because you're talking about kids and this, in school, I really think there should be more theater, more play. You know, I train in, of course, meditation and yogic philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, because I train in self-actualization, right? This is one of my favorite things to study is humans, human behavior, um, and the way our minds work. It just fascinates me. And I
Yeah.
do this through acting as well. And so I study acting, and what's phenomenal with this is just it is all conflict. Of course, it's drama, right?
Yeah.
But just think about it for a second. We're asking, or this book is asking people to create a life, a world inside their mind and in their actual life that is of peace, of love, of joy. So consider a movie right now, a movie that, had parents that were loving and kind to each other, and they weren't making assumptions, they were asking questions, and nobody in the family took anything personally, and the kids were feeling free to be playful, and everyone was, able to communicate effectively and have spaciousness and understand. Nobody would watch that movie, John.
Oh yeah. No, I know.
It's
Yeah.
not entertaining enough, and it's, he says this, and a lot of neuroscientists in their work say we're addicted to our emotions. So many people be like, don't bring drama. I don't like drama. All this. You love drama.
Yeah.
Trust me. We all
Yeah.
love drama and we do like to create it, even if we don't want to take responsibility for that. And I think training in it
Yeah.
has helped me see that. And it's also helped me see how much I want to hold back my emotions, how
Okay.
much I want to express in a way that'll make you feel like, yeah, that's the right way you should express this character. But
Gotcha.
the best acting is actually being so free that you are in a flow state and this character is just expressing out of you as honestly and truthfully as possible. So you really have to release all your judgment about the character, your judgment about this drama, this conflict, your judgment about how people might see you. What you have to really let go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't be able to express that way. And
That's
I
huge.
feel like, what if more kids, were taking class where it's like an emotional expression course?
Yeah.
You're gonna learn to make drama and conflict and all these sorts of things, making assumptions, taking things personally. It's in every piece of drama, right? Not being
We
impeccable with your word, every piece of drama.
yeah.
And you're gonna learn to allow that to be play. And when you can allow that to be play, just think of the freedom you
Yeah.
have to then, be passionate about something, but also allow somebody else space to be passionate about something, not judge emotions so much, your own and others. And then imagine if you did that coupled with some level of meditative practice or yoga or something, the ability to have more self awareness, more spaciousness, more ability to manage your attention. Just
Yeah.
consider what that would do for the other side of the mind body that would naturally create this balance and allow, I think, children to not navigate a world that has them fit into this path and this box that society has cut out and that mom and dad would like, and mom and dad would feel really good if I did all this and all. But no, what makes me come alive, and for our kids to then walk out in that sort of power and that sort of freedom, what makes me come alive and
Yeah.
choose work and life and relating that lines up with that.
Yeah. You went through so much that has a lot of merit or a lot of good ideas. Um, I just think we're obviously we're domesticated now, but we were primal animals. So emotion is just us. Like we've spent more years, not being civilized than in civilizations, we're animals. So we're trained to be civil. We're trained to learn the curriculum. We're trained to interview correctly. We're trained to get to work on time. But when it comes down to it, the majority of our DNA is the majority of our DNA, all those millions of years or whatever, hundreds of thousands of years, we're animals. So
Mhm.
we're emotional.
Yeah, your emotions are in business, whether you think they're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And not
Um,
only that, John, but what I noticed is leadership in companies, they want their people to be authentic, to be real, to be expressive, to be open. And yet, we've literally been trained to try to make
yes.
ourselves into this, and so it's
Is that the
fascinating to
robot?
me. Yeah,
Was
that's
that
the
the robot
robot.
you were? Okay. Okay.
But
All
it's
right.
fascinating to me that, we're trying to pull out of our, um, you know, workers, associates, managers, something that the world has trained them to be different than that, you know? Uh, but we all thrive off of that. We all want that. Sales is better with that. Creativity is better with that. That's the mind of creativity,
Yeah.
is that free space and expression and authenticity.
I think I like how subjective this one is. Like, always do your best.
Mhm.
Um, because only you, anybody listening to this, anybody watching this is gonna know what is needed in their environment, in their work. They are gonna know the details. These assumptions are so simple, but everybody has to customize it to the reality that they're living in. So I like how open this one leaves it. Like, it's up to you to figure out what the best is for you.
Mhm.
And the example you just gave of work, you're absolutely correct. Some bosses ask for it, and some people just aren't used to that because like you said, the way that we were programmed to think. So overall, with these four agreements, and I find it awesome that you said you've read it so many times, and every time you take more away from it. What do you want people to take away from this? How is your idea of this evolved? How has it helped you?
Oh, it's helped me in innumerable ways in all areas of life. But mostly, I think it's allowed me a sort of spaciousness
Yeah.
and freedom, freedom in my mind, in my body, with my emotions, and beautiful relationships. Really, really beautiful relationships that are based on love. It's allowed me to be less reactive. And so my wish for others is just read it.
Yeah.
Just take in this perspective, this information, and whatever it does for you, it will do. Whatever you're able to hear in the moment, you'll hear. And
Yeah.
you know, um, and I don't think there's one person. I've shared this book with so many people, and I don't think that there's one person who hasn't been transformed in some way by it. So it's that kind of book, and I just being able to put it in the hands of another and let them have their own experience with it,
Yeah.
um, resonates with me.
I I I wish they would have this like as summer reading or reading in school. Nothing against Lord of the Flies or Catcher in the Rye or Flowers for Algernon. I don't even know if I'm dating myself right now. I don't know what kids are reading, like say high
Resonates.
school or older, like middle school kids. Um, and it may be based on an ancient civilization, the way that they looked at it, the Toltec wisdom. But it's almost like, okay, if you don't want to think about where it came from, as you said, maybe something religious or whatever the source is, I think there are a lot of great lessons in here that I wish people would start to talk about, at least talk about. It's not that they need to figure out their purpose or they need to get it right from the get-go, but the ability
Yeah.
to start thinking in this direction. So um, thank you so much for covering this book. And now I just kind of wanted to get into what you're up to, what you have going on. I mean, what people should know about with what you're doing with your company and your work. Is there anything that you want to highlight?
Well, I think a good thing to highlight is during our pandemic, I made a course for healthcare workers. and it's a virtual course. We had the opportunity to facilitate the course with a clinic, a dialysis clinic with nurses and managers and a number of different roles, and put it through a study in the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, cool.
So we showed statistically relevant results for reducing stress. So
Gotcha.
that was really fantastic. And now, because the course was so successful and, these workers really benefited from it, our intention is now to get it out in more of a public space. There's been a few articles in the news about it, and, we're looking to get that out now to nurses, doctors, and just the world of healthcare to give them some support. As I think I said in the beginning, my work being this foundation of well-being to support performance. That's really the initiative behind it all. I mean, there's a lot of offerings for preventative care. So after you get sick, after you have a problem mentally or emotionally, after there's a struggle, sure, you could use your insurance, or there might be a few other resources available to you. But I believe in preventative care. I believe in having tools and resources available so that you can keep yourself from getting to a place where you really need, support. You have to dig yourself out of a hole, so to speak.
Before it's too
Let's
late.
not get into a hole.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the project I'm most excited for now, and I have a few companies, private equity firm and a healthcare marketing firm, and another digital marketing firm that I'm working with to provide some training programs,
Awesome.
which vary in the realm of, we have full potential selling, and then we have, resiliency and fearlessness in working at home in a virtual space. So that's a lot of well-being training in terms of, making virtual working our new comfort zone and really being efficient and effective there and less stressed. So there are a lot of programs going out, and I just really love the opportunity to take my wealth of, really dynamic, well-rounded knowledge and put it together in a way, that is very tailored for an organization to facilitate the cultural change and the organizational change that they're looking to do with this approach, well-being as the foundation of the performance.
So much going on.
Great.
Listen, yeah, when I post this, I mean, I'll make sure to include all your social media just so people can contact you if they're curious. Is that okay? Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Awesome. Christina, thank you so much. I know I had brought this back up a while back. I'm finally glad that we got to sit down and talk about this. So yeah, the 4 agreements, a Toltec wisdom. There's the book. I think you can have countless conversations about this. Everybody would have different takeaways. Again, I think it's important to get it into the hands of younger people just so they kind of get on that path of just kind of assessing what's around them. I love the aspect that you brought to it from the spiritual side, from the meditative side, from the energy side. So, yeah, thank you so much. And I look forward to maybe down the road, we'll cover another book, but thank you so much for spending time with me on this one. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. This was a lot of fun.
Take care.